Chapter 5, 5A, Paisley. Settling in at Siren Cove was as easy as breathing. The atmosphere was so warm and welcoming. It seemed like every passerby was family. The travelers would all come down for breakfast about the same time and amuse themselves with hearty conversation and banter. Mrs. Norfolk was usually busy with one tenant or another, tending to the bar or counting the tills. Fenton was off at school during the day, but would eagerly return to spend some quality time together. My days consisted of tutoring and wellness classes, but just having a friendly face by my side for the remainder of the day was quite helpful. My bedroom also doubled as my study quarters, and I had memorized every inch of it already. Not surprising, since it was so small and lacking the fanciful decor of the manor. The floor was a sturdy wood, though drafts didn't rise from the floorboards like that of our old home, seeing as the bar was beneath us. The windows, however, might have been a tad drafty on the outskirts of the building, had the weather been behaving properly of late. The beds all had the same burgundy blankets that complemented the pale wooden interior splendidly. A chest sat at the end of the bed for clothing or other various objects, and a table with chairs was positioned in the corner of the room. It wasn't much, but it was the closest I had truly felt to home since leaving for grandfather's. I stared out the window, wondering again of the peculiar weather. It had been about a month since I arrived at the cove, and snow should have been falling by now. Instead, it felt like a brisk mid-spring day at the coldest hour of the night. It was apparently the talk of the whole town by now. Fenton had made it his passion to get to the bottom of it, while I continued to pursue my Magus calling. We speculated, perhaps, that it might be due to a new fire Magus in town, though this was rejected by many of the travelers of the inn. In the months since coming to the cove, I had drastically grasped my fire. I was, however, relocated to the kitchens for practice, since I may have scorched a few boards in my room. I was now able to summon fire around any part of my body if I concentrated hard enough, though it was generally my hands that it came in handy. I just started to learn how to boil water without melting pots and cups when Alira and Cadence arrived. Alira, true to her word, had convinced grandfather to let them visit 3 times a week instead of just once. It was so wonderful having all the people I cared about joyously together so often. I concluded my studies with the aggressor and continued on upstairs with Alira and Cadence. Cadence was happily crawling around the floor when Fenton arrived from school and loaded down with snacks and drinks. It was like this every time the girls came to visit with me. We made a habit of bringing out the toy he had made for her every moment possible. "Not again with the Selkie business," Fenton said, with a sly little smile on his face. "Oh, but it sure is such an adorable Selkie," I insisted. "You know, it's a griffin, Paisley," Alira remarked. She would always take his side, of course. "Speaking of griffins, guys," I started, "I've been thinking. I heard of this school here on Mortalis Isle that caters to Magus. Well, it isn't a school so much as a tutelage. There is just the one instructor. She is a solar Magus, and her school bears the mark of the griffin. Anyhow, she is accepting students this coming year, which only happens every 10 years. I was hoping I could convince grandfather to let me attend." "A Magus school?" Alira queried. "I thought they were all over on Magus Isle. It will be a hard proposal to pass on to grandfather for sure." "I bet if anyone could do it, it'd be you, Alira," Fenton insisted. "You're definitely his favorite." "Do you think you could ask grandfather if I could go check it out, Alira? It would be better coming from you. I would ask him myself, but he doesn't come to visit. Unless, do you think your mother would be willing to pick us up later if we traveled back to the manor with Alira and the staff?" I asked Fenton. "Let me go see," he said, jauntily hopping to his feet, as if we're on another adventure. He strode out of the room and was back within minutes. "Ma said yes. She said she would accompany us back as well, since she would like to talk with your grandfather. We waited out our remaining time, talking about the tutelage and taking turns with Cadence. It was curious to see Fenton crooning over a baby. It was even more curious to see how close he and Alira had become while I was shut away from everyone. I could definitely notice the close proximity in which they sat, the lingering hand-touching, and the flighty glances. At first I thought all the giddy smiles were all for me, but it was soon apparent that something had changed. I was no longer Fenton's best friend. I had been replaced by a capable and maturing sister who seemed to step in and steal away what was mine. Cheer up, Paisley, I thought to myself. Just be happy for them. What they have could never replace the love you and Fenton have in your friendship. He has been your best friend since you started school, and that will never change. I cursed myself for worrying about myself over their happiness. I should be happy for them and excited that both of my favorite people had found happiness in one another. But for now, I wasn't about to let them forget that I was on to them. Mwahaha. We loaded up the carriages for the trip back to the manor, tying Mrs. Norfolk's carriage behind ours for an easier ride. Mrs. Norfolk sat in the front with Marin, discussing who knows what. Griella sat with a sleeping Cadence nestled gently upon her chest. Meanwhile, Alira, Fenton, and I sat opposite, discussing if I could ignite the back of the carts to make them go faster. We picked up a bit of speed once Cadence woke up from her nap and made it to the manor before dark. The visage of the manor was so beautiful, vines and flowers growing up everywhere, a beautiful red and purple tinged sun hovering in the background, and soft grass blanketed the yards in every direction. Grandfather was sitting outside smoking his pipe when we arrived. Not surprisingly, he was caught unaware by the presence of the Norfolks and myself.